Welcome to the Taubman Museum of Art in Roanoke, Virginia. My name is Bill White and I'm the guest curator for the Jean Hélion exhibition, Journey in Life and Art, which will run from February until May of this year, 2013. Jean Hélion is a very important 20th century French painter with an American connection. He is particularly well known for his geometric abstractions during the 1930s, alongside of such important painters as Mondrian, Jean Arp, Leger. And what I think makes his journey particularly interesting is that with all of that significant work that he produced and the attention he got critically, after the war, after having been imprisoned in the German camps for 2 years, he came back to Paris and became a figurative artist in order to express the connections to his life that he felt had been somewhat absent in the abstractions. The exhibition that you are to see is including the early works through the late works in mostly oil. And a good friend of mine, Ulysse Laporte from Stanton, Virginia, is about to give you some insights from his lifelong knowledge and personal connection with Jean Hélion. And I hope you will enjoy the exhibition and the remarks that Ulysse brings to the work of Hélion. When was the first time you met Hélion?
In person, it was when he came to Baltimore for the exhibition that I had managed for him. And that was in February of 1945. I was the president, think of that at 24, I was the president of the Baltimore Artists Union. Ah. And one of the members at a certain meeting said, wouldn't it be a good idea if we sponsored a show of somebody that was very prominent on 57th Street in New York? And so they said yes. For the next meeting, everybody come in with a suggestion about who you'd like to pursue. And at the next meeting, nobody had thought about it. And I thought about Helion because I had admired that one painting that I had seen, and I knew that he was back in the country, and that was having a show at Paul. Yeah, the great dealer. He was Picasso's dealer. Yeah, Paul Rosenberg. Yeah. And so they told me to go ahead, and I think maybe I told them that I knew his wife. And I wrote Rosenberg, and Helion answered me, and told me that he was very interested in the idea. Excellent. And we went from there.
And what was your earliest experience in seeing Hélion's work that gave you familiarity with his work?
Walter Chrysler had been the college roommate of Thomas C. Colt. Colt was the descendant of the Colt arms work, and Colt was the director of the Virginia Museum, and he was able to persuade Walter Chrysler to lend the Virginia Museum his collection of contemporary painting, modern paintings, and in that was one Helion. That was a big one, and that was really all. It absolutely knocked me cold. I was forced to, I guess, to be a Frenchman because of my name. You know, made me named Ulysse Laporte. And actually, I admired the Germans. I admired the German uniforms in the First World War, and above all the airplanes, those beautiful red planes with the black crosses. I just loved them, and I didn't much like being French. And I did like French uniforms and things like that. But then we had a priest, this young guy who had been, I think, a French teacher. And he was what I'd call a Franco-maniac. And he said that anybody with my name had to speak French, so he always speak French to me. And,
Helion lived in Rockbridge Baths with his wife and his son during the 1930s. Did you know his work and visit him at all during that time period?
oh no,
No.
no. You know that he had to, he was mobilized when the war was declared in '39, and he was called up, and he immediately went back to France, and was in the army and was captured with the whole French army, and he was sent to a prison ship in the harbour of Stettin, which was part of Poland at that time. But he quickly, he's a genius for to learn the language. He quickly became the interpreter of the thing, and then after he'd been there maybe a year and a half, he felt confident enough to just walk off and get on a train and go to France. He passed through France and snuck through France and he got to Spain. He got to, and then he was able to call Richmond, and they'd send him the money to come over. And this was in 1942. Yeah, he was back in the States in 42.
Mm-hmm. And I understand he wrote his remembrance of being a prisoner of war.
Yeah,
They Shall Not Have Me.
And it was a bestseller. John Vallitor had that painting, and then of course the fact that I showed up at Holland's with about 3 Helion paintings, I guess that did make an impression that I was not conscious of at the time. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know about the exhibition. I just knew that he had bought that painting, but that was the circumstances. And that was a good painting.
Yes, yes. What I think is an unusual part of the history for Helion is to have been a major figure in sort of non-objective abstraction, and then seemingly to convert to being a figurative artist after the war. Do you remember what Helion may have said to you about his reasons for making that shift?
Not only did he talk about it, but I think he even wrote about it. That the work that he was doing had no reference to his life, and that he missed that. I have other thoughts about it, that maybe if you look at the things that he saw, no development in the manner that the direction that he was traveling at that time. Mm-hmm. That he, thought that this will just be repetition, and something you got to do something. And Picasso was like a chameleon. He kept changing, and he dominated the world as far as attracting attention to his painting, because I think of that fact. The other people that stepped close and really developed, had beautiful, rich styles, and could maintain them until they died, and they were still interesting. But I think that Helion realized that, as he said, that what he was doing had no reference to his life, mm-hmm. and he wanted to do that. So
it seems to me that Helion's abstraction work from the 30s has a more complex spatial illusion than most of his other friends like Mondrian. Mm-hmm. Do you see that in his work as well?
I think that's really, that there's a strong classicism and intellectual compositions are real things in painting and drawing and in composing pictures, and there is the interestingly composed space that you see from well, at least from the early runs, I should say, from can't think of names of anybody anymore, but it's a fresco in Florence that is beautifully composed. Say what goes on. It's a tribute money painting of Masaccio, Tommaso, and you know the fish and coin over here, and the beautiful conversation, plastic, I guess you'd say, but to me it's compositional movements through. I just love it. I remember that big painting because that little painting of Pegeen was in that. I remember that's where I bought it. Was in that room, and if it's not in the painting, that big painting of that. It's another painting the same size that is in that that room. I have from our show in Baltimore some newspaper accounts, but it was always because his work was not understandable. You know, they just thought he was getting away with pulling their leg.
Ulysses, what would you want a viewing public in now 2012 to know about Helion that might not be sort of very familiar to them? Is there anything in particular that you would want to emphasize to people who come and see the show?
Oh yes, there was nobody that was doing what he was doing back in the late 30s. You know, from let's say 35 on, it was unique, and it was very well received by people like Gallatin and Christ, I guess, but certainly the Museum of Modern Art. Even as you know, the Whitney bought a painting from him because he wasn't in America and had an American wife.
I guess lastly, I want to focus a little bit on the sort of urban scenes that Helion really worked so hard on in his later years, the 70s and the 80s. Was there anything about those interests in painting from life or about the life of the city that Helion communicated to you about those later works?
No. He did. He painted portraits. You know, there was. In fact, it's somewhere in my archives. I have a magazine article. I think it appeared in America. Yeah, and they were good. Really, good likeness and really brilliantly done. They were very interesting. It was reproduced in color in an American magazine, and it said, I think it was that Helion paints the portrait.